Hello friends. About 70% of the friends who watch my videos are not subscribed, and I would be very happy if you did. Also, don't forget to press the like button and leave your comments. Your interaction makes the content reach everyone and contributes to the growth of the channel. Thank you all. From which country or city do you follow the channel? How long have we dreamed about this moment? Emily asked softly. She rested her head on her husband's shoulder as they stood together. Yeah, a long time, Jack replied simply. He didn't need to say more after years of hoping. They looked at their new house on Maple Street in Willow Creek, Illinois. It was an older place with character. It looked fantastic to them. Their family of 4 had wanted a home for what felt like forever. Now it was theirs. The price was very low for real estate. The realtor said it was a quick sale. The previous owners needed money fast. Jack and Emily loved the deal. They didn't ask many questions. The papers were signed. The keys were theirs. Everyone was excited to move in near Route 66. Mom, can me and Ethan explore the attic first? Tyler asked eagerly. Their SUV rolled into the driveway. Emily's boys were close in age. Tyler was 12. Ethan was 11. The brothers were best friends, not just siblings. They enjoyed summer break with little to do. Emily taught 3rd grade at Lincoln Elementary. She was still young. Jack worked at Midwest Protection Services. He managed the team there. They had a normal life, typical American family. What? The attic already? Emily laughed. Let's unpack first. Sort those boxes. Make this place ours. The attic will wait, Jack said firmly. The boxes need to go soon. The boys didn't argue with Dad. 30 minutes later, their car stopped at the 2-story house. Willow Creek was an old town with history. Homes were old and new. Locals lived with newcomers like Jack and Emily. Their new home was at the end of Maple Street. A big field stretched out behind it. They stepped out of the car. All 4 stared at the house with joy. Apple trees grew nearby. A man stood under them. He watched them quietly. Jack waved at him. The man didn't wave back. He turned and walked away. The family didn't notice. They were too happy. They opened the gate. They stepped into the yard. It was neat and nice. Fruit trees grew by the neighbor's side. 2 small sheds sat near the house. A well stood alone by the field. It was a round stone structure. Smooth rocks were stacked 3 feet high. A thick chain was bolted to it. The chain was for a bucket. They looked around the yard. Then they went inside to unpack. A few days passed with moving mess. Boxes were everywhere. Furniture got moved around. Finally, everything was unpacked. The house felt like home. The boys explored the attic. They found no secret doors or treasure. They checked the sheds out back next. They found one thing. A yellowed tooth sat in an old book in the attic. It was a molar. They didn't care much. They left it there. You smell that? Tyler asked. They walked back from the sheds. Yeah, something died nearby, Ethan said. Maybe a raccoon? We should find it, Tyler said. He sniffed the air. They stopped by the well. They looked into its dark hole. Maybe something fell in, Ethan said. That could be the smell. Maybe, Tyler said. Why doesn't the water shine? The well was black inside. No light bounced back. Is water even there? Ethan asked. He found a white pebble. Tyler threw it in. No splash came. No water, Ethan said. It's just for looks, Tyler said. Tell Dad something's rotting. They went inside. Dinner talk was light. The well stayed out of it. They watched TV later. Night came. They went to bed. Tyler turned off the bedroom lights. He didn't go to bed right away. He stood by the window. He stared at the well outside. The day's strangeness bothered him. He couldn't shake it. Then he saw something move near it. His body got stiff. He called Ethan over quietly. Both boys looked out the window. They tried to see in the dark. The night hid too much. Maybe it's a raccoon? Ethan said. His voice was shaky. Maybe, Tyler said. He wasn't sure. We won't check it out. They stood there one more minute. Their hearts beat fast. They got into bed after that. Sleep came slow. A small fear stayed inside them. They didn't know what they saw. Next morning, Ethan woke up fast. Tyler shook him hard. His voice was loud. Get up. Get up, Tyler said. He was still sleepy. Look at this. He pointed to his nightstand. His eyes were big. Ethan rubbed his eyes. He got out of bed. He walked over slowly. A white pebble sat on the stand. It was the one from the well. Black water circled it. Ethan looked at Tyler. He was confused. Is that the rock you threw? He asked quietly. His voice shook a little. It looks like it, Tyler said. How did it get here? They didn't understand. Telling mom and dad seemed silly. Adults wouldn't believe it. Pebble can't move to their room. They'd think it's a story. Dad might get mad about the well talk. They kept quiet. The boys went downstairs. Mom gave them chores over breakfast. Emily had one last day at school. She'd be home by noon. Jack left for work as usual. The kids stayed home alone. They ate cereal. They waved their parents off. Then they went outside. They walked to the well. A cold feeling hit them. They expected a black hole inside. They were wrong. Sunlight shone on water now. It looked clear. Did we imagine it? Tyler asked. He scratched his head. It's weird we both saw it, Ethan said. You saw someone last night too. Dark makes things funny, Tyler said. It's okay now. Let's explore town. They turned away. The water in the well bubbled a little, turned dark and smelly. They didn't see it. The boys walked around Willow Creek. They came back home later. Tyler looked at the well as they crossed the yard. A bad feeling grew in him. Something pulled him to it. He didn't tell Ethan. His brother walked ahead. Tyler went to the well alone. He stood there. He looked down into it. He felt stuck. Ethan saw him. He ran over. He touched Tyler's shoulder. Tyler jumped. He looked scared. Then he looked down again. Don't freak out, Ethan said. He smiled weakly. He looked too. 2 yellow teeth lay by Tyler's foot. They were old molars. They bent down. They stared at them. Their stomachs felt sick. Gross, Ethan said. We saw one in the attic. Yeah, Tyler said. These weren't here earlier. Tell Dad, Ethan asked. Not yet, Tyler said. Leave them. See what Dad says if he finds them. They stood up. Tyler reached the porch. Ethan called from the yard. Look there, he said. He pointed next door. Tyler turned. An old man stood by his house. He stared at them. Hey, we're your new neighbors, Ethan yelled. He tried to sound nice. Billy, is that you? The man said. His voice was rough. No, not Billy. I'm Ethan, he said again. New neighbors. The man didn't care. He turned. He went inside. Weird guy, Tyler said. He walked in. At dinner, the boys asked Dad about the neighbor. Jack shook his head. He ate slowly. No, I don't know him, Jack said. I'll go say hi this weekend, see who he is. The day ended. The house got quiet. Everyone went to sleep. Ethan was in bed. Tyler turned off the lights. He walked to the window again. Looking at the well? Ethan asked. He saw Tyler staring. Yeah, Tyler said. It scares me. I don't know why. He stopped talking. He thought hard. Then he got excited. Come here. Quick, he said. His voice was tight. Ethan jumped up. He ran to the window. A shape stood by the well. It was short, like a kid. They saw it clearly. Get the flashlight, Tyler said fast. Ethan grabbed one from a drawer. He stayed quiet. It's coming, Tyler said. His voice was low. Ethan got back. The shape moved slow. It stopped after each step. I'm scared, Ty, Ethan said. Tell Mom and Dad? Wait, Tyler said. Let it get close. We'll shine the light. Maybe it's a kid playing. A kid, Ethan said. From the well? I hate it. We'll get Dad, he said. His voice broke. Soon, Tyler said. They looked out. Tyler stood in front. Ethan peeked behind. The shape got close. Moonlight made it shine. It looked wet. They didn't breathe. Ethan grabbed Tyler's arm. The thing was near the house. Tyler turned on the light. It showed a face. Wet hair stuck to it. Black eyes stared. The thing dropped down. It ran on all fours. It went back to the well. It disappeared inside. The boys yelled. They ran to their parents' room. They talked over each other. Their words mixed up. Jack and Emily woke up fast. They rubbed their eyes. They tried to understand. "Stop," Jack said loud. His voice was sharp. The kids stopped. They looked at him. They were quiet now. "One of you talk. Be calm," he said. His voice was steady. Tyler took a breath. He told what they saw. He spoke fast. Ethan shook in Emily's arms. He listened to Tyler finish. Jack put on clothes. He left the room. He took a flashlight from the hall. He turned on the porch light. He flipped the backyard light switch. Bright lights lit up the yard. Everything was clear. Jack went outside. The night was cool. Stars shone bright. He looked around. Nothing moved. He walked to the well. He shone the light in. Water reflected it back. He checked around it. Nothing was there. He sighed loud. He turned back. A sound came from next door. He pointed the light. Something moved in the trees. Then it was quiet. Maybe a bird flew off. The light scared it. Jack went back inside. He found Emily and the boys in their room. They waited for him. "Nothing is there," he said. He shrugged. "No monsters either." "Dad, there was a kid," Ethan said. His voice was loud. He was wet. He looked creepy. "You don't believe us. He was real. Teeth were by the well this morning too." Jack saw Ethan's fear. He got soft. He knelt down. "No teeth now," he said. "I checked. If someone was there, they ran away." "Yeah," Tyler said. "Ran on all fours, like a dog." "Here's what we'll do," Jack said. He stood up. "Tomorrow I'll get motion sensors from work. I'll put them on the lights. If anything moves, you'll see it." "Promise?" Ethan asked. His voice was small. "I promise," Jack said. He nodded. Emily took the boys to their room. She tucked them in. She kissed their heads. She shut the door soft. They closed their eyes tight. They wanted to sleep fast. They were still scared. They ate breakfast. The boys promised Emily to stay near home. They went to the porch. They sat on the steps. They didn't talk for a while. They thought about last night. Ethan spoke first. "You saw its face," he said quiet. "We watched that zombie movie. It looked like that. Pale and weird." "Yeah," Tyler said. "But the movie had white eyes. This had black ones. Really creepy." Emily opened the door. She looked out. "Hey, I'm going to the store on Elm Street," she said. "Want to walk around town with me?" The boys said no. They went inside. Last night stuck with them. They couldn't relax. Emily walked down Maple Street alone. She saw old and new houses. Some had old ladies on benches. She smiled at them. She liked the small town. The store on Elm Street was empty. It had lots of stuff to buy. Emily picked up some things. She started to leave. The cashier stopped her. She wore a red apron. "Hey, are you new here?" the cashier asked. She sounded nice. "Here for summer?" "No," Emily said. She smiled. "We bought a house on Maple Street." "Cool," the cashier said. She looked happy. "Willow Creek is great. Nice people. Simple life." "Where's your house?" "At the end. By the field," Emily said. "It was super cheap. Me and Jack always wanted a house." The store got quiet. The cashier's smile went away. She looked serious. "Did you meet your neighbor?" she asked fast. Her voice was low. "No. Jack will go this weekend," Emily said. She didn't get it. "Is that important?" The cashier twisted her hands. She looked worried. "Listen," she said. "Your house has a bad name." "What do you mean?" Emily asked. "Is it falling apart?" "No, not that," the cashier said. "It's always empty. People leave fast. Ask your neighbor. He lived there before." "She said it has a bad name," Emily told Jack that night. They ate dinner. "Tomorrow is Saturday. Can you see the neighbor?" "I feel weird now." "I'll go," Jack said. He held her hand. "Don't worry." He turned off the light. They went to bed. That night, Ethan woke up. He heard a clicking sound. He sat up. He rubbed his eyes. Tyler stood by the window. He held something. He moved it in his hands. "Ty, why are you awake?" Ethan asked. His voice was small. Tyler didn't answer. "Tyler, talk to me." "What's that?" Ethan said louder. No reply came. He turned on the lamp. He got out of bed. He walked to Tyler. Tyler's eyes were open. He didn't move. He looked at the well. "Stop it. You're scaring me," Ethan said. He sounded upset. He took Tyler's hand. He turned it over. 2 yellow teeth were there. Ethan screamed loud. Jack and Emily ran in. Ethan cried hard. "Teeth! Teeth!" he shouted. He pointed at Tyler. Tyler woke up. He looked lost. Jack didn't sleep after that. He sat on the couch. He thought about everything. The boy's story. The cashier's words. Emily slept with the kids upstairs. Ethan wouldn't stay alone. Jack told them to rest. He waited for morning. He needed to see the neighbor. "Anyone home?" Jack yelled. He knocked on the man's door. It was early. No one answered. "Hey," he called again. "I'm Jack, your new neighbor. I want to talk." "New or old? Who cares?" a rough voice said behind him. Jack turned fast. An old man stood there. He was thin. His hair was gray. He looked at Jack. "I'm Jack," Jack said. He held out his hand. "Henry Walsh," the man said. "Your wife heard stuff at the store." "Yeah," Jack said. "The boys say something comes out of our well." Henry's face got dark. "Come in," he said. He walked to the door. Jack went inside. He sat in a dim room. Henry sat across from him. He sighed big. He started talking. "That house gets sold a lot. No one stays long. I lived there once, me and my wife. Our daughter Clara too. My wife died young. Clara and I stayed. She was pretty," Henry said. He smiled a little. He got up. He took a photo from a shelf. He gave it to Jack. The picture showed a beautiful woman. She had pale skin. Her hair was long and dark. Her eyes looked deep. They felt strange. "Clara," Henry said. "She grew up. She loved a bad guy. He left her pregnant. She raised Tommy alone. We helped each other. Clara was happy. Tommy was her life. He was a good boy. One day he didn't come home. He was 11. He said he'd be back for dinner. He wasn't. Clara got scared at night. Cops came in the morning. Their dog found the well. Tommy drowned. I don't know how. I asked her once," Henry said. "Who are these people you see?" She said they were friends. They understood her. They could fix it all. I tried to help her. She got mad. She yelled at me to leave. She said I stopped Tommy from coming back. I didn't know what to do. I left her alone. This house was my friend's. He was in the army with me. He gave it to us when he died. Clara pushed me out. I moved here. I hoped she'd get better. She got worse." Henry breathed hard. Fires started in her yard. Strange people came. They made noises. People said she joined a bad group, a cult. Months went by. One night she came here. Her eyes were crazy. She said she did it wrong. The gifts weren't right. I said I'd get her a doctor. She stared at me. She asked if I believed her. Then she ran. Next day, her friends found her dead. She hanged herself. "She left me a note," Henry said. "Sell the house. Don't go back. I learned too late. Souls don't return. Your daughter, Clara. I buried her. I sold it. The money felt bad. I didn't want it." He stopped. Then he kept going. "A lady, Mrs. Jenkins. She told me to see a preacher near Springfield. He said Clara met evil. She couldn't fight it. I gave the money to his church. They pray for her quietly. She killed herself. That's all I could do." Henry drank tea. He made it while talking. He looked at Jack. The story was hard. Jack didn't know what to think. "Clara broke after Tommy," Jack said slow. "She thought he came back. That can't happen." "I thought that too," Henry said. "Then I read her note again. Maybe something else came back. Not Tommy. First family moved in," Henry said. "Man, wife, little girl. 1 month later they left. The wife felt something bad. She called a friend. That friend checked the place. She said, 'Leave now. Save your kid.' They did. I found her later. I asked what she saw. She said Clara brought Tommy back. But it wasn't him. Something else used his body." Jack looked confused. "What does it want?" he asked. "Kids maybe," Henry said. "It's tied to Tommy. It might want a new body. To live again. That's crazy, Jack said. How did she do it? Cults know things, Henry said. I watch the well now. Every night, something comes out. Tries to get in the house, near whoever's there. The room was quiet. Jack's head hurt. Ghosts, cults, taking bodies. He could believe it, or call it nonsense. 2 hours later, everyone sat at Henry's. Tyler and Ethan looked at old hunting books. Henry had lots of them. Jack, Emily, and Henry sat at the table. They talked low. This is wild, Jack said quiet. Emily thought hard. Her face was tight. That woman, she said. The one who warned them. Who is she? She doesn't charge, Henry said. Just a normal lady. She sees things. A friend knows her. She helped me free. We should call her, Emily said. She saw evil. She might stop it. You won't leave? Henry asked. He was shocked. No, Jack said. We have nowhere. Selling it hurts the next family. What if they have kids? What if they don't ask you? Henry agreed. Okay, here's her number. He gave Emily a paper. Emily went outside. She called the number. She came back 10 minutes later. She's Sarah, Emily said. She'll be here in 1 hour. 1 hour passed. Car stopped outside. A neat woman got out. She smiled small. I'm Sarah, she said. She shook hands. They sat inside. They told her everything. Henry's story. The boys' nights. The teeth. I know you, Henry, Sarah said. We met in Springfield. I told you then. Evil lives in that well. A mom called it. Clara wanted Tommy back. She used dark ways. I'm sorry it ended bad. She looked at Emily. I'm not a witch, not a seer. I just see stuff. I can't change it. I'll help you. We don't know what's real, Emily said. The boys saw it, but still. You don't trust them? Sarah asked soft. No, I do, Emily said. It's just kids. Sarah nodded. Let's walk your land. No boys. Henry stayed with the boys. Jack, Emily, and Sarah went out. They stood by the well. The summer sun was hot. The sky was blue. It felt wrong for such dark talk. This doesn't make sense, Jack said. He put hands on his hips. I could get cameras, sensors too. From work. Maybe it's nothing. The boys dreamed it. Henry wants Tommy alive still. I can't fight your thoughts, Sarah said. She shrugged. You decide. I feel evil in the well. I don't know its shape or its plan. Henry says it wants kids' bodies, Emily said. She looked at Jack. Like a movie? Sarah said. I saw one. A dead soul took a body to live. Wait, Jack said. That was an evil soul. Henry said Tommy was good. Yes, Sarah said. Clara's pain opened a door. Someone used it. Not Tommy came back. She saw it too late. Teeth, Emily said loud. Her eyes got big. What? Sarah asked. She didn't follow. The boys saw teeth by the well, Emily said. Tyler held some that night. He was out of it. I stepped on one too. After the store. I kicked it. She ran to the porch. She got on her knees. She searched the grass. Jack and Sarah watched. She looked hard. Here, she said. She held up a yellow tooth. She smiled big. Now what? Sarah said. You found one. The boys saw more. We need them all. Yes, Jack said. But then what? The movie didn't tell us. No clue, Sarah said. We have something. We can plan now. They went to Henry's. Sarah said she'd think more. She left. Jack and Emily asked Henry to keep the boys. They searched the house. They found the attic tooth. More were hidden. In corners. Under floors. Like someone put them there on purpose. At home, Emily's phone rang. She answered it. She put it on speaker. Sarah's voice came fast. 2 things, Sarah said. Good and bad. Good first. I found help. My friend dates a guy. He makes charms. I told him your story. He says burn the teeth. Put ashes in the well at midnight. Use his rune to lock it. He's coming tomorrow. The bad? Jack asked. It knows you're fighting, Sarah said. It might stop you. Find the teeth fast. They had 18 teeth that night. They put them on a white plate. "Let's rest," Jack said. It was 1 in the morning. "We need tea," Emily agreed. Her eyes hurt. Teeth hid everywhere. Behind doors, in lights, even in an old chandelier. "We missed the boys' room," Jack said. "The closet floor might have more." Jack and Emily checked the boys' closet. They pulled at floorboards. They looked for teeth. The lights got super bright. Then they blinked. They went out. The room turned dark. "What happened?" Jack said. He asked himself. "I'm scared," Emily said quiet. She moved close to him. Her breath was fast. Jack got up. He went to the window. He pulled the curtains open. He wanted light. None came. He took the flashlight. He shone it outside. Something moved. A wet sound came from below. It growled or slurped. "Quiet," Jack said. He put a finger to his lips. He opened the door slow. He walked to the stairs. He looked down. Something crawled up. It moved on 4 legs. Water dripped from its clothes. It shone in a small window's light. Jack pointed the flashlight. It screamed. It ran down fast. Jack walked down the stairs. He kept the flashlight on. He heard the wet sound again. It was close. He moved the light. He saw it run off. He dropped the flashlight. He got ready. Too late. Something cold hit him. Came from above. Pushed him down. It was small, like a kid. It sat on him. It squeezed his chest. He couldn't breathe. A big light flashed. The thing screamed. It let go. It ran to the door. Emily bent over Jack. She breathed hard. "You okay?" she asked. Her voice shook. "Look at this." A big camping light sat on the stairs. They got it last year. For a trip. It was strong. She found it in the closet. She ran down when he yelled. "Light hurts it," Jack said. He talked to a guy Sarah brought. His name was Luke. He was tall and thin. His eyes were dark. He wore leather bracelets. He made a wood charm. It had marks on it. Sarah stood near. She covered her mouth. Emily told her about the night. Emily looked tired. Her face was pale. She faced something new. Something she didn't believe before. "Burn the teeth," Luke said. "Put the ashes in the well at midnight. Throw this in after." He gave Jack the charm. "It locks the evil in. Stay back. The well might fall." Jack thanked him. Luke left. Sarah stayed. "You can go," Emily said to Sarah. "This might get bad." "No," Sarah said. She smiled. "I always watched. Now I fight." The fire burned low. Small red bits glowed in the dark. It was 11 at night. Emily got the camping light. She turned it on. The yard lit up bright. They sat by the ashes. They talked a little. Everyone felt nervous. They waited for something big. "Smell that?" Sarah asked. She sniffed the air. Black stuff came out of the well. It bubbled on the grass. Smelled awful. A hum started inside. Jack put the ashes and teeth in a bag. "What time?" he asked loud. 5 minutes to midnight, Emily said. Her voice was scared. Jack ran to the well. He threw the bag in. A loud scream came out. The black stuff moved fast. He threw the charm. "Stay gone," he said quiet. It sank. The ground shook. The well broke apart, fell into itself. More dirt. 2 more loads. "Then make it flat," Jack yelled. A tractor worked next morning. The driver nodded. He dumped dirt where the well was. He drove over it. He made it smooth. Jack, Emily, Ethan, and Tyler stood in the yard. They looked at the spot. No well was left, just new dirt. They didn't talk. Each felt the night their own way. The boys knew it was over. Their parents told them. They weren't scared now, but they stayed careful. "It's gone," Jack said. "Tommy or something else. It's done." "The teeth?" Ethan asked soft. "They held it here," Emily said. "We burned them. It can't stay." Sarah left that morning. She'd call later. Luke was gone fast. No one knew his full name. The family stayed in the house. Willow Creek got used to them. Life went back to normal. Henry came over sometimes. He didn't talk about the past. His eyes were sad, but he seemed calmer, like something heavy left him. Ethan and Tyler played again. They avoided the sheds unless needed. Jack put up sensors and cameras. He kept his promise. It made him feel safe. Emily looked at the field sometimes. She thought about what happened. It was close and strange. They didn't know if it was Tommy or something in his body. They'd never forget it. Some things have no answers. They thanked Sarah and Luke. Those two helped when fear was big. They asked for nothing back. Whispers of Ashwood. Amidst the endless fields, where the wind whispers forgotten names, like the voices of the dead, and the sun, like a lonely eye, watches everything but sees nothing, lay the town of Ashwood. Once a thriving place, where life pulsed, it was now like a pale shadow of its former self, like a ghost town, forgotten by all. But in the depths of its dark alleys, behind the dilapidated houses where the wind played with the crumbling plaster, and the abandoned shops whose signs had long since peeled away, a secret lay hidden, like a forgotten melody that still pulsed in the very heart of the town, like a heavy disease. The story began with the arrival of a mysterious stranger named Caleb. No one knew where he came from, no one knew his past. He appeared in Ashwood on the 1st of June, 2021, as if from nowhere, from the very abyss, dressed in an old, tattered cloak with a hood concealing his face, as if he were hiding not only his identity but also his soul. Caleb settled in the town's gloomiest inn, the Dismal Cat, whose name spoke for itself on the 2nd floor, in the furthest room, which seemed darker than the rest. Locals shunned him. He was like a dark stain against a gray sky, like a harbinger of doom. After a few weeks, strange things began to happen. At first, there were minor incidents that could be dismissed as coincidences. The unexplained disappearance of pets, which seemed to dissolve into thin air, strange sounds at night, like a child's cry, and inexplicable gusts of icy wind, even though it was unbearably hot outside, as if someone was trying to freeze them with fear. But gradually, these phenomena became more and more frightening, as if someone was playing with them, testing their patience. Doors began to open on their own, as if pushed by invisible hands. Shadows changed their shapes as if they were alive, and the smell of decaying flesh and sulfur filled the air, as if hell itself had arrived. On the 11th of July, a bloodless corpse was found in the town park, and on his chest, a strange symbol was carved. All the blood had been drained from him as if he had been drunk. The locals were horrified. They began to realize that what was happening was not random. Soon, everyone in Ashwood knew Caleb's name. He became the embodiment of all their fears, and his name was whispered with dread, like a curse. People said they had seen him wandering the streets at night, like a shadow gliding between houses, and his eyes burned with red light, like embers, as if he were a demon come from hell. They claimed that he was not human, but something else, something sinister, something that should not have existed in this world, that he had brought darkness into this world. On July 23rd, a young woman named Emily decided to challenge fear, unaware that it might be her last act. She was a skeptic and did not believe in fairy tales, and believed that there was a logical explanation for everything, that behind every nightmare stood ordinary human cruelty. Emily was a local journalist, and she was interested in this story. She saw in it not just horror, but an opportunity, a chance for fame. She decided to find Caleb and find out what was really happening, thinking that she would expose this hoax, and everything would be as before. She thought that there were mundane events behind the story, but she was wrong. In the evening, at 8 o'clock, as the sun began to sink beyond the horizon, Emily set off for the Dismal Cat Inn, as if walking towards certain death. The owner, an old woman named Agatha, whose eyes seemed to have seen more than was possible, tried to dissuade her, but Emily was unyielding, as if possessed. Agatha said that she had seen Caleb go out every evening, in the dark, and that he was definitely not human, that he was something greater and more terrifying. She even tried to tell Emily about the past horrors that had happened in this town, but Emily did not listen to her. Emily, nevertheless, went up to the 2nd floor and knocked on Caleb's door. Silence, an ominous and frightening silence. She knocked again, but there was silence again, as if no one was there, or as if there was something there that was silently waiting. She pulled on the handle and the door, strangely enough, opened, as if inviting her to come in, as if it were a trap. The room was dark and cold, as if sunlight had never graced it, as if eternal night reigned in it, as if it was in another dimension. On the table lay an open book made of human skin, written in an unknown language, as if in the language of demons. Strange symbols were drawn on the walls, which pulsed in the dark as if alive, and on the floor was a circle in which incomprehensible symbols were also inscribed, as if it were some ancient ritual, a summoning of some entity. Emily felt a wave of anxiety engulf her. She began to sense an invisible presence. Suddenly, she heard a sound. Footsteps. They were quiet but distinct, as if someone was approaching her, as if she was being hunted. Emily turned around, her heart skipped a beat. In the doorway stood Caleb, like a shadow from the darkness itself. His face was hidden by his hood, but she felt that he was looking at her, as if she was his prey, and that he was reading her thoughts. She wanted to speak, but the words seemed to get stuck in her throat, as if someone had clamped her mouth shut. Caleb slowly approached Emily. His hands were unnaturally pale, with long, thin fingers that seemed bony and ended in long claws. He reached out and touched her cheek. Emily felt an icy chill, like the touch of death, as if her soul was being touched by darkness, and this cold penetrated her mind. Then Caleb spoke, and his voice sent a chill down her spine. His voice was hoarse and quiet, like the whisper of the wind, but the words echoed in her mind, in that incomprehensible language in which the book was written, as if she was merely a relay for his words. Emily didn't remember what happened next. She seemed to fall into darkness, into oblivion, and a piece of her life was erased from her consciousness. When she came to, she was not in the inn. She was in some strange place, and she realized that her reality had been distorted, and that she was no longer in this world. It was a cave, on the walls of which were carved the same symbols that she had seen in Caleb's room, but now they pulsed and glowed from within, as if they were part of some portal. In the center of the cave was an altar made of human bones, and on it lay several human skeletons, as if they were sacrifices. Emily was horrified. Her fear turned into panic. She felt her mind giving way to darkness. She couldn't understand how she got here, and where she was, and she felt as if she was being watched. She looked around. She noticed that there was another entrance in the cave, as if a path to salvation. She ran there as if escaping a pursuer, as if running away from her own fear. She found herself in a forest, but the forest was not as she remembered it. It was distorted, as if chaos had settled in it. The trees were black and leafless, as if they had withered from some terrible disease, and they seemed to reach out to her, as if they were trying to grab her with their claws. The ground was covered with moss and rotting leaves, and the smell of death and sulfur hung in the air, as if she had found herself in hell itself. Emily tried to get her bearings, but she didn't understand where she was, and which way she should go, as if she was lost in a nightmare. She wandered through the forest for several hours until she came across an old hut that seemed like salvation to her. It was abandoned and dilapidated, but nonetheless, she decided to go inside, as if hoping to find some kind of shelter there. Inside, it was dark and damp, and the air was heavy and stuffy. On the floor lay old books and scrolls, covered in dust and cobwebs, as if they had not been touched for an eternity. Emily began to read them, as if possessed. The books were written in different languages, including the language Caleb spoke, but she understood them, as if someone was prompting her their meaning. She learned that Ashwood was built on the site of an ancient cemetery, and that beneath it lies a certain ancient evil, waiting for its awakening, which seemed to be watching her, as if she was its food. She learned that Caleb was not human, but one of those who were trying to awaken that evil, that he was like a conduit between worlds, and that he was searching for the key to open a portal between worlds, and that she was that key, and that her soul was destined for it. Emily felt despair engulf her, as if she was being swallowed by darkness. She realized that she would not be able to go home, and that she had become part of this nightmare, that she was just a pawn in someone's sinister game. She looked back, and in the doorway of the hut, she saw Caleb, and behind him in the darkness, she could make out the silhouettes of figures whose eyes burned with red fire, like a whole army of demons. He was smiling, and his smile was insane, as if he was pleased that he had caught her. It was not a kind smile, but a smile of anticipation, the smile of a predator who was about to tear apart his prey. Emily understood that she was doomed, and that her soul no longer belonged to her. On the 16th of August, an investigation into Emily's disappearance began at the local police station. The sheriff, named Thomas, did not understand what was happening, but he felt that something terrible was happening in his town. He didn't believe in fairy tales, but what was happening in Ashwood went beyond logic. He felt like he was going crazy. He could not explain the disappearance of pets, the bloodless corpses, and Emily's sudden disappearance, as if the darkness had taken them. But he understood that something was wrong, and that he had to do something before it was too late. Thomas decided to study the town's archives in search of any information, in search of an answer to this nightmare. He found old records of the ancient cemetery on which Ashwood was built, and of the ancient evil that lay beneath it, as if he was a silent witness to history. He understood that Caleb had not just appeared in the town, and that everything that had been happening lately was connected with this, that he was just a puppet of this evil. But it was too late. The darkness had already engulfed the town. Thomas went to the Dismal Cat Inn where Caleb had settled, as if walking towards certain death. The owner, Agatha, was horrified. She told Thomas what she had seen, and that Caleb had left the inn many days ago, and that he had not been alone, that in the darkness, she could make out strange figures that were following him, as if they were his army. She said that she saw a shadow that was following him and that it looked a lot like Emily, but in the eyes of that shadow, there was no trace of humanity. Thomas went up to the second floor and entered Caleb's room. The room was empty as a grave, only the smell of sulfur remained. The only thing he found was a book made of human skin with incomprehensible symbols that seemed to pierce his consciousness, like poisonous claws. Thomas did not touch it. He understood that it could be dangerous, that it could curse him. He decided to go back to the station and study it there, but the book had disappeared, as if it had never existed. At that moment, Thomas heard a scream, and that scream was not human. It was terrible and loud, as if evil itself was screaming, as if hell had opened its gates. Thomas ran out of the hotel and saw that the sky had darkened, and there were neither stars nor a moon on it, only complete darkness, and the earth began to shake as if it were alive. From the center of the town, a pillar of black smoke and fire began to rise, as if an abyss had opened, and from it, as if being born from hell, dark silhouettes began to appear, as if hordes of demons were ready to devour this world. Thomas realized that the portal was open, that he was too late. Thomas tried to contact the other police officers, but the communication was broken. He was cut off from the outside world, as if the darkness had swallowed him. He was alone and his fate was sealed. He understood that Ashwood was doomed, and that he was too. He picked up his weapon and ran toward the town, knowing that he would most likely die, that it was his last battle. Since that day, Ashwood has disappeared from the map forever, as if it had never existed, and only emptiness remained in its place. No one has ever seen it again, and no one has ever heard of it again, as if it was erased from history. But rumors say that sometimes at night, in the place where the town used to be, you can hear the whispers of the wind, like the voices of the dead, and see ghostly shadows that glide between the trees, and that it is not the wind, and not shadows, but the ghosts of those who died, who are crying out for help, and that they are waiting, that they are trying to warn, but no one hears them. They say that Caleb is still wandering this world, and that he is looking for new victims in order to open the portal between worlds, and that he can be anywhere, that he can be hiding in the shadows and waiting for you to stumble. Even next to you, even right behind your back. The last mention of Ashwood was in the archives, in which records were found that on November the 5th, 2023, a strange anomaly was observed in the place of the town, and that a black hole seemed to have opened there, and that it was getting bigger every day, and that one day it will swallow the whole world. The cartographer's labyrinth. The salt-laced wind, sharp as broken glass, carried whispers of forgotten languages across the Isle of Ethel, a craggy, desolate place where the sea seemed to claw at the land's edge, a place where the veil between worlds was thin. It was here, on this forgotten scrap of earth, that the old lighthouse stood sentinel, its beam a futile attempt to pierce the oppressive fog that clung to the island like a shroud, a beacon that offered no comfort, only a reminder of the isolation. No one had lived on Ethel in generations, not since the whispers grew too loud, and the shadows stretched too long, taking the form of grotesque shapes that seemed to mock human existence. Or so the legend went, a tale told in hushed tones by sailors who dared to venture too close to its shores. The year is 1972. A young cartographer named Elias Thorne, a man more comfortable with the precise lines of maps than the chaotic unpredictability of people, arrived on the island by a small, sputtering boat, its engine groaning as if it were trying to escape its fate. He had been drawn to Ethel by an ancient, incomplete map he had found in a dusty London archive, a map that was not made of paper, but from a material that resembled human skin, a map that spoke of a hidden structure, a labyrinth said to twist through dimensions, a gateway to realms beyond human understanding. He arrived on the 6th of June, determined to complete the map and uncover the secrets it held, driven by a curiosity that bordered on madness. Elias settled into the abandoned keeper's cottage, a place that smelled of damp stone, mildew, and forgotten lives, a place that seemed to breathe with its own malevolent life. The first few weeks were uneventful, spent exploring the island's rugged coastline and charting the ruins of a long-abandoned village, each ruin bearing the same strange symbols that he saw on the map. He found nothing of significance, nothing that matched the strange, pulsating symbols on the ancient map, which seemed to shift and change depending on the light. The silence of the island was unnerving, broken only by the mournful cries of gulls, which sounded like tortured souls, and the ceaseless crashing of waves, which seemed to be trying to swallow the land whole. Yet, he felt like he was being watched, like eyes were following him from the shadows of the old stones, and that those eyes were not human, but something more ancient. Then, on the 21st of July, Elias found it, a hidden entrance in the side of a cliff face, concealed behind a veil of thick ivy that seemed to writhe and pulsate as he approached, a mouth into the darkness. It was a rough-hewn tunnel leading downwards, the air around it noticeably colder, a frigid breath that seemed to come from the depths of the earth itself. He knew, with a certainty that sent a chill down his spine, that this was the entrance to the labyrinth from the map, that he was not simply mapping it, but entering it. He entered the tunnel, a single lantern his only companion in the encroaching darkness, its light casting long, distorted shadows on the walls. The tunnel descended steeply, twisting and turning in ways that defied logic, until it opened into a large cavern, a space that felt both ancient and alien. The walls were lined with strange carvings, symbols that seemed both familiar and utterly alien, as if they were a language he could understand but could not speak. In the center of the cavern was a circular stone structure, its surface covered in intricate patterns that pulsed with a faint, inner light, the patterns shifting and changing, as if they were alive. The labyrinth had begun, and with it, the unraveling of his mind. As Elias explored deeper, the passages became more maze-like, and the symbols more complex, now appearing on the floor and ceiling, and everywhere he looked. He began to lose his sense of time and direction, and his perception of space and reality. The walls seemed to shift, the corridors lengthening and shortening, as if the structure itself was alive, breathing and toying with him. He recorded his progress in a worn leather notebook, its pages filling with increasingly erratic handwriting, a desperate attempt to maintain some sense of order in the growing chaos, and that even the words seemed to shift and rearrange themselves when he looked away. He documented the date, the 2nd of August, and the time, roughly 11 in the morning, before he continued, but as he turned the page, he found that his last entry had been overwritten by different handwriting, and a phrase that he didn't remember writing. The map is not the territory, and the territory is not your. He found that the labyrinth was not just a physical place, but something else, something that was affecting him on a deeper level. He started having vivid dreams, nightmares that seemed to bleed into reality, and they were getting more intense with each passing night. He would wake up in different places, sometimes miles from where he had fallen asleep, sometimes the labyrinth, sometimes in his room, sometimes on the shore, and sometimes in a place that he didn't recognize. The carvings on the walls began to speak to him, not in words, but in images, feelings, a sense of something ancient and hungry, something that was slowly consuming his mind. He began to hallucinate, seeing shadows moving in the periphery of his vision, and then in front of his eyes, they started to take grotesque forms, with eyes that seemed to stare right through him. He started to feel his body changing, like the skin was crawling, and his bones were shifting. On the 15th of August, Elias found a large chamber, its walls covered with strange carvings, which seemed to rearrange themselves when he blinked. In the center stood a pedestal, and on it, a strange, crystalline object, radiating an intense, almost painful light, its red glow pulsing with an unnatural rhythm. He felt compelled to touch it, a primal urge that overrode his sense of self-preservation, an invitation that he couldn't refuse. As his fingers brushed the crystal, a wave of energy coursed through him, and he saw a vision, a brief glimpse of countless universes, all intersecting in this single point, all vying for his attention. He saw things he could not comprehend, beings that defied description, and felt the weight of millennia upon his soul, as his mind was being opened to something that he wasn't meant to see, and that it was something more than just horror. He awoke on the 23rd of August, on the shore of the island, the sand cold and damp beneath his skin. He did not remember how he got there, and he felt as though someone had erased all his memories. He did not remember how much time has passed, but he knew that he wasn't the same anymore. Something inside him had changed. He felt different, changed, as if he had been replaced by something else, something that was using his body as a vessel and was slowly taking control. The maps in his notebook no longer made sense. Their lines were distorted and the locations were shifted. The familiar landmarks of the island seemed warped and twisted, and the lighthouse, which should have been a reassuring beacon, now felt like an ominous monolith, a black tower pointing towards a sky that was no longer his own. He looked at the sky, but it was dark as night, even though he felt like it was morning, and the stars were aligned in a pattern that defied human understanding. He decided to explore the island again, driven by a compulsion that was not his own, in order to find the labyrinth again, and to map what he could not comprehend. As he explored the area, he stumbled upon a small, unmarked graveyard. The gravestones sunk deep into the ground. The headstones were ancient, almost crumbled to dust, and all of them were marked with the same symbols he saw in the labyrinth. But as he looked closer, he noticed that each headstone contained the same symbol that he had seen in the labyrinth, a spiral that seemed to suck the light from the world, and that some of them seemed to have been recently disturbed. He realized that the island itself was a part of the structure, and that all that he saw was connected to it, that he was not just a cartographer but a part of this map himself. On the 10th of September, Elias returned to the lighthouse, hoping to find some answers, to understand what was happening to him, to his mind, to his body, to the world. He climbed the winding staircase to the lantern room, but found that it was not what he remembered, that the lighthouse was changing just like his mind. The gears were rusted and frozen, the glass was cracked, and the lamp was extinguished, as if they had been replaced with something else. Instead, a large mirror was standing where the lamp used to be, and the reflection it showed was not his own. When he looked into it, he saw not his reflection, but a series of distorted images, like a glimpse into a nightmare. The labyrinth, the crystal, the ancient symbols, and a dark, shapeless entity that seemed to be calling to him, a being that radiated pure malevolence. He did not understand what was happening, but he felt as if his mind was being invaded, as if he was being used as a conduit for something ancient and powerful. It was on the 18th of September, at 7 in the evening, that he started writing on his hand, words that did not seem to come from him, using his blood as ink. He wrote, "The map is not the territory, and the territory is not yours," and felt a cold shiver as he realized he had no control over his hand, and that his body had become a canvas for something else. He looked into the mirror, but he saw someone else, someone with eyes that were pure black, and a smile that made his blood freeze. Elias started having conversations with himself, except it wasn't him, it was the entity. He argued with this entity that seemed to take over his mind, his voice now a mixture of his own and something else, something inhuman. He tried to reason with it, to find out what it wanted, but it only responded with cryptic phrases and unsettling laughter, as if it was amused by his futile struggle. He was losing control, and that was the scariest part, as he was now a prisoner in his own mind, watching himself become something else. On the 26th of September, Elias found himself back in the labyrinth, but everything had changed, as if the labyrinth was twisting itself inside his own mind. The walls were now covered with grotesque carvings that pulsed with an unnatural light, and the air was thick with the smell of decay and sulfur, and he could feel the eyes of something watching him from the shadows. He could hear whispering, countless voices all around him, speaking in a language he did not understand, but that he could feel, a language that was old and primal, a language that was driving him mad. He found more chambers, each one more horrifying than the last, and in one of those chambers he found himself, but not the Elias that he was, but something else, something that was a grotesque parody of himself. He saw things moving in the shadows, shapes that defied description, and the feeling that he was a mere prey in a cosmic game, a pawn in the hands of something that did not know him and did not care for him. He tried to retrace his steps, to find a way out, but the passages were constantly shifting, and the symbols seemed to be mocking him, changing and moving, becoming more and more complex, and more unsettling. He was lost, not only in the labyrinth but in his own mind, and his sanity was now a broken and tattered thing. He stopped making entries in his journal because they started having the same phrases over and over again, and because he could no longer hold the pen. He was slowly losing himself as the entity was taking over, and that he was about to become something else, something that was not human. On the 1st of October, he found the crystalline object again, but it was different, more like a beating heart, pulsing with a malevolent life. It was darker, more malevolent, and now pulsing with a red light that seemed to suck the light from everything around it, a beacon to a hell that was about to break into his world. As he reached out to touch it, he saw another vision, a twisted version of the island, populated by grotesque beings that seemed to be made of nightmares, and a dark, immense vortex opening up in the sky, its edges tearing apart the fabric of reality. He realized, with a bone-chilling horror, that he was not mapping the labyrinth, he was opening it, that he was not meant to map, but to open the gate. He cried, "No, no, no," over and over again as the visions kept coming, each one more terrifying than the last. He awoke again on the shore, but the island was even more distorted than before, as his mind was now broken and his vision was clouded with shadows. The sky was a swirling vortex of darkness and red, and the lighthouse was gone, replaced by a black, obsidian spire that seemed to pierce the heavens, a monument to a hell that was now taking over. He saw that all the buildings were now in a grotesque shape, and felt the presence of the beings that he saw in his visions, who were now emerging from the vortex, and were closing in on him, and that he was now one of them. He understood that this was not the island anymore, that he had brought it to another place, and that he had doomed it, and that he had doomed himself. He started writing on the sand, using his own blood, drawing the symbols that he saw on the walls, in a last attempt to understand what they meant, a last cry for salvation, as the beings from the vision were now emerging from the vortex, and were closing in on him, their forms distorted and terrifying. He finished his last drawing, and the beings caught up with him, and he felt as if he was being torn apart, his mind finally shattered. His last words were, "The key is within the map, but the map is not the key, and the key does not open the door, but the door opens you," a warning that will never be heard. On the 15th of October, a small fishing boat found Elias's boat, drifting aimlessly in the sea near where Ethel was supposed to be, the boat now covered with strange symbols. There was no sign of Elias, nor was there any island, and the place where Ethel should have been was nothing more than fog and endless water. The map that Elias had was nowhere to be found, only the notebook with the countless entries, written in his blood, and which made no sense. To this day, no one knows what happened to Elias Thorne. Some say he was lost at sea, and that the island was just a myth. Others say the Isle of Ethel never existed, that it was just a fabrication of his own mind. But those who know the whispers say that it exists, but not in our world, that it has crossed the veil, and that it is now part of something else, something that is older than the universe itself. They say that it is waiting in another dimension, waiting to be mapped again, and to come back, and that it is drawing you to it. And those who know the whispers say that sometimes, when the fog is heavy, and when the stars are aligned in a strange pattern, you can hear the sound of a ticking clock and feel the presence of someone watching, and that the person watching is not human. The last entry that was found in the archives of the small fishing boat was, "The map is not the territory, and the territory is not yours," written in blood over and over again, as if he was trying to warn them. And then a single line, "We are one," and the date, the 31st of October, and the time, 12 at night, a time of crossings between worlds, and when the veil is thin.